G'day guys, Darren here again. The name's Darren, but you can call me Daz. Now, I don't normally make this sort of video for my channel. Most of my videos are either for car repairs, travel, life in Australia. And I guess this sort of does come under the category of life in Australia, but today I'm going to talk to you about and tell you what happened to me many moons ago when I was living down in Victoria. In fact, I was living just outside of Melbourne. Now, this was the year 1988, and I was 19 years of age, and I had recently started work at Australia Post in Melbourne, right in the city centre. And I lived a good 100 kilometres away from Melbourne at that time, down towards Phillip Island. And I used to work an afternoon shift, which from memory, I think I started work at 2:15 or 2:30 p.m. and the shift went to about 10:30 or 10:45 p.m. at night. And I would then have to walk some distance to the car park, which was away from where I worked, and then I would have a good an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes drive to get home. So if I worked overtime, and I quite often did, I don't remember ever saying no to overtime, then I may not be knocking off until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I would have a 1.5 hour drive home, maybe a bit shorter if traffic was good. Now, this has stuck with me for a long time, and I've never forgotten it, and I probably haven't really got over it because it was such an unusual experience. But I was coming home this night, and from memory it was probably just before 2 a.m. and I was on this stretch of road, and I travelled it quite a few times. I've probably done this trip by this stage probably 30 or 40 times in a few months heading home. And I remember going down this long straight, and it was tree lined on each side. It was a country road, but it was a main arterial road, but definitely not a highway. From memory, it was maybe 2 lanes each side. And what I remember seeing was, as I was driving along, and I was driving a 1967 Ford Fairlane V8, an American style car, but it was actually built in Australia. And it was a great car. It had a 289 cubic inch Mustang V8 in it, and this car used to drive really well. I used to love driving around in it. It was a pale yellow colour, and I really loved that car. I've always regretted selling it. Now, this particular night, as I'm driving along, I saw something in front of me, further off in the distance, but it looked like the moon. My first assumption was it was just the moon over the treetops over in the distance. But as I got closer and closer to it, it got bigger. Something that the moon doesn't do. You could drive towards the moon as long as you like, and for as far as you like, and the moon's not going to grow in size. And then I remember looking over to my left a little bit, and there was the moon over there, the proper moon. So I saw this light, which didn't look all that unlike the moon, but it was kind of smallish when I first saw it, and as I headed down this road, it got a little bit bigger. Then I remember this light move off and sort of go around to the left, like this second moon sort of went past the moon and swung around. And I assumed it was maybe like a high beam light, a single spotlight from a helicopter or something like this. So I just dismissed what I saw as being nothing unusual. I remember going down this road, doing a slight turn, and then getting onto this main straight. And on this main straight, I wasn't that far from home. I would have been home in probably another 15 minutes. And that's when something really strange happened, because the light that I saw disappear off round to the side, kind of like some distance behind me, I'm just going to guess now and say maybe 100 or 200 meters behind me, this light appeared in my rear view mirror. So this is a right-hand drive car. I'm looking in my rear view mirror, and a good long distance behind me, almost, I'm halfway along this straight, this light appears in the distance behind me and starts to gain on me. Now, first thing I thought that this was not related to the light I'd seen in the sky, because this light was only maybe, who knows, 4 feet, 5 feet off the ground and approaching quickly. So the first thing I thought to myself, a motorbike is coming up behind me. And although I was making, traveling along at a rapid pace, I was probably doing 110 kilometers an hour. I remember this light coming up to me quite quick, and I expected this light, being a motorbike, to quickly overtake me and get in front of me. I think I even backed slightly off the pedal, maybe down to 95 or 100 to make it easy for this bike to pass me. Now, what happened next was really quite strange, because the light came up very close to me. I mean, so close, it was less than 1 car length behind me. It was probably only, I'm guessing, around 2 meters, probably, less than 7 feet off the tail of my car, off my rear bumper. And I thought, okay, if you want to overtake, just overtake. Now, that light sat on my tail and was like it was glued to my car. It was almost as if I had attached a metal bar to my tow bar on the back and had mounted this light on it. Because whatever I did, whatever speed I went, it sat firmly fixed right there. And looking in my rear view mirror, it was basically in line with my eyesight. There was this light. Now, to describe it, it's kind of something like the light I'm using at the moment to record this video. It was probably, I'm just guessing, somewhere between 6 or 7 inches and maybe up to 9 or 10 inches, and it was perfectly round. The colour was unusual, and it was sort of like a normal electric light bulb colour. It was slightly yellowish or slightly orange, but it wasn't, how can I say, it wasn't uniform. Looking at it, it had like an outer ring and an inner ring, and it was kind of like something like patterns around the outer ring and then more of a solid centre. And kind of like looking at a human eye. It had like, the inner ring and then the outer ring. And it was kind of changing colours. It was as if the outside of it was rotating, but the centre of it was fixed. And so imagine a dinner plate with a bit of a lip around the outside. That was basically what I was seeing. Now, it was bright, but not too bright. I would say it was probably somewhere between, if you were talking about a car's light globe, it was probably between 25 watts and 50 watts of power. It wasn't stunningly bright in my rearview mirror, but it was just like having a car or a motorbike behind you. Now, it wasn't equivalent to like a high beam, 100 watts. Now, I started to wonder what this was, and it dawned on me that the light I was now looking at was the light that was up in the sky. But now it was sitting eye level off the road and almost like it was tethered to the back of my vehicle. So I wondered what to do. So the first thing I thought I would do is not try and outrun it, but I would increase my speed. So I increased my speed up to 110. I probably even took it up a bit more to like 120. And whatever I did, this light was like it was bolted to the back of my car. It sat exactly where it was, and you could move the wheel or whatever, and it followed you like it was tethered to your car. Now, started to worry me because I thought, okay, I've either got like some angry motorcyclist behind me and he's just playing funny buggers, or I don't know what I thought, but I started to get this very uneasy feeling after not very long. It didn't take me more than 20-30 seconds to realise there was something strange and bizarre about this light. So I really didn't know what to do. Now, I started, because I was out in the middle of nowhere basically, you know, probably 15 minutes up ahead there was going to be a small cluster of houses where my parents lived at a place called Pioneer Bay, Coronella. But there wasn't really much out there. It was just mainly bush and just lined with big trees. And this is 2 o'clock in the morning, pitch black, no street lighting. And I suddenly came over with this sort of like a sense of dread or a sense of fear. This was something very strange. And what dawned on me at the time, and it still does to this day, was what I was looking at, what I was experiencing was either something supernatural or something extraterrestrial. I do not know of any man-made machines, devices, contraptions that could do what this was doing. We didn't have drones in those days. Remember, this is 1988. Technology was, you know, it was more transistors and, you know, integrated circuits, and that were a new thing. We just didn't have, you know, I was an electronics technician the year before that. And when I went to study at trade school, we were still learning valves and transistors. This was, what was following me was something that I had never seen before. I don't think it was military or man-made. There was something about this. Now, I also do not believe that it was a natural phenomena. By that, I mean, I don't think it was a mirage. I don't think it was a reflection. What I was seeing was definitely behind me. It was lighting up the interior of my car. It was reflecting back into my face through the rear view mirror. It was real. Now, as I'm driving along and I've increased my pace, I'm trying to see if this is in fact a car with one headlight or a motorcycle. I'm trying to see behind the light if there's some sort of metalwork or body, or I can hear an engine or anything like that. I was decelerating, taking my foot off the accelerator now at this stage, and the car would naturally slow down, but I was trying to hear if there was an engine running behind me, that this was some sort of motor vehicle. And there was absolutely nothing. It was just silence, this round light, which I might do a drawing or try and come up with something that I'll share on this video. But it had an outer ring, which either seemed to revolve, and it had like little lines, like three lines, something like that, and it seemed to sort of revolve, and the outside colour was slightly different than the inside colour. Now, I can't remember where the change in colour was coming from, but it was kind of like, it was a yellowy, maybe slightly orangey sort of tinge light, only slightly that colour, but I could also see blue hues coming from it. I could also see like a greenish tinge and that coming off it. I'm not saying it was changing colour, but if you've ever looked at like a bubble, somebody blew a bubble, and you look at it and there's like this moving sort of like rainbow sort of pattern, well, not exactly like that, but not too unlike that. There was something about this light where it sort of like was greeny, bluey, yellow, orange, only faintly. It was mostly white, but there was something about it. Now, I came to the conclusion then, and I totally feel the same way now, that this light had intelligence about it. This was not just some random light following me. You know, this wasn't like a car with its headlights turned off and someone shining a spotlight at me or something like that. There was nothing behind me except for this light. it was capable of going up into the sky, doing aeronautics, coming down just off the road and following me. And it kind of was able to immediately duplicate what I was doing, such as speeding up, slowing down, steering. It was able to duplicate that. If you had a car right on your tail and you slammed the brakes on, you know, brake check, it's going to hit you. No, whatever that gap was, it remained. No matter what you did, it did exactly the same characteristics of what you were doing. And it was almost like it sensed immediately what you were doing, or it preempted, and I kind of believe that, it preempted what I was going to do. Almost as if it had seen what I was going to do and then was ready for it and made sure that, you know, I couldn't trip up whatever this was. Now, what happened was eventually, I would say it's hard to work out how long this thing followed me for. It could be as little as 2 or 3 minutes. It could be as much as 5, 6, 7 minutes. Pardon me. Because I was so concentrating and worried about what this thing was behind me, sort of lost sense of time. But all I know is, as I approached the end of this road and there was a sharp turn and a bend around to the right, I sort of thought, okay, what's going to happen when I take this bend? And I completely expected this light to follow me around the corner. But as soon as I started to turn this corner, this light fell back, pointed upwards, and took off at great speed. Now, when I say it took off at great speed, I couldn't in my rear view mirror see how fast or how high it went, but it basically went gone, like that. I saw, although I couldn't see how, you know, its actual speed and its projection, but it just gone like that. A blur, it was that quick. Now, I had no idea what this was, or didn't know whether I should tell people. And I did tell a few people about it, mainly because I met up with a truck driver. Now, this interstate truck driver had driven all around Australia many times. He was, I think he'd been a truck driver for 35, 40 years or more. And he was telling me that when he used to go across the Nullarbor Plain, you know, which joins the sort of like the eastern states to Western Australia. And he was telling me that he had been followed by a min-min light. Now, that was the first time I'd heard that term. And min-min, M-I-N-M-I-N, 2 words. And at the time, he thought it was an Aboriginal word because apparently min-min lights were well known to Indigenous Australians. Aborigines had been experiencing them for a long time, well before white settlement, and possibly even for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And early settlers in Australia had experienced these lights as well, especially, well, I mean, yes, down in Victoria and New South Wales, but also up in Queensland, pretty much all over the country as far as I know. I've heard about, since then, I've heard about min-min lights in every state of Australia. The only place I haven't heard of them appearing is in the Northern Territory, but that's probably because there's a small population and I haven't spoken to anyone from that area. I would not be at all surprised if there are min-min lights up in the Northern Territory. Now, apparently, looking into it a little bit more recently, apparently it's named after a pub. The word min-min comes from the name of a pub up near Boulia, up in north central or northwestern Queensland. And there used to be an old pub there in the 1800s, and that's where it was near the Min-Min Hotel, where some outback sort of like explorer or, you know, a stockman had seen this same thing, a min-min light, And that's where it sort of entered into the Australian culture, that there are these strange lights that you can experience. And, I found out since that a lot of people, possibly in the thousands, have experienced min lights at some stage of their life, usually while they're driving, and or usually in a remote location. Now, so this guy said to me, the truck driver was telling me about his min light experience, and he'd had a few min-mins over the years. But basically he's driving along this remote highway. I think it might have actually been the Nullarbor Plain. I'm pretty sure he told me it was the Nullarbor Plain, and I think it was around South Australia. Now, as he was driving along, he looks in his rear view mirror, because you see cars and caravans and things coming up behind you, travellers, towing a trailer and that. And he sees this light behind him, and it's sat behind him for quite some time. And he's thinking, well, there's a vehicle behind me that wants to overtake me. So he would pull over, put his outside indicator on, telling people, yeah, you got a clear run, you can overtake me. Well, this light just sat there and didn't move, and it followed him for quite some time. I think he said it might have been there for 20 or 30 minutes. But then what happened was, and this is what's quite shocking, and people say, these min lights are just a reflection. Some people have said that this can be a reflection of light source from as far away as 200 or 300 kilometers away, and you see this light off in the distance. And I'm willing to give almost anything a listen to consider what this min phenomenon might be. But this truck driver was telling me, because he had quite a hairy experience, so this light was behind him for quite some time, for many kilometres. And then all of a sudden, the light disappeared. So while he's looking in his rear view mirror, looking behind him, this light disappeared. And he thought, oh, okay, they've turned off, they've pulled over, something's happened. And then all of a sudden, as he looked beside him, the min light is now in the cab with him in the truck. And it's hovering just above the seat. Well, he slammed his brakes on, came to a grinding halt out in the middle of nowhere, and this thing took off through the glass window and gone. And he said after that, he never believed that this was some sort of light reflection, that it was some sort of illusion, it was not a hallucination. It's nothing to do with travelling long distances. It's not the white line fever of seeing the white line passing your eye a million times on long trips. This thing actually got into the cab with him, lit up the cab, faced at him, scared the living bejesus out of him, and then he kind of screamed, slammed the brakes on, stopped the truck, and this thing took off. So I've experienced a min light. The truck driver I spoke to he had a horrific experience with his min light. I'm really glad that didn't happen to me on this country road in Victoria at 2 o'clock in the morning. I would have freaked out. So I'm glad that as I turned the corner, it took off and left. Now, an interesting thing is where I turned this corner to go right and head down towards Phillip Island, right in front of me, that great big acreage area there used to be the Holden testing grounds, where Holden vehicles used to be tested. They used to drive them through water and over bumps and corrugations. It was a proving ground, a testing ground for new vehicles. And that was what was right in front of me. But if you'd have visited it in 1988, it was pretty much just surrounded with trees and bush, and maybe through the trees you might get a glimpse of some sort of track or a circuit in there. There was no real people, as far as I know, living on site. Maybe there was a caretaker or something, but it was also pitch black in there. What I was seeing was nothing to do with that testing ground or anything like that. There was no lights or any signs of life in there at 2 o'clock in the morning. but that's the actual location. I'll probably try and put a map up on the video so you can see where I was talking about, where this took place. But my brother Rod, who I've just made a couple of videos with recently, he was in Australia for 2 or 3 weeks, and he's now gone back home to the Philippines. And while he was here, I happened to mention the Min Min lights, and Rod said, I've experienced a Min Min light, and or maybe even more than one, I think he said. And Rodney used to be in the, so we were based in Brisbane in southeast Queensland, and Rod was in the army down at Puckapunyal and Singleton in Victoria and New South Wales. And Rod used to quite often, when he had leave, jump in his little Datsun 1600 and race as quick as he could back up to Queensland, because he had to be back on, you know, over the weekend, you know, after the weekend he had to be back. So Rod was telling me, I didn't get a lot of detail from him, but even my brother, doing one of his outback runs, coming to Queensland, coming up through Western or Central New South Wales, experienced a Min Min light. So I just thought I would reveal, you know, tell you what I experienced, what happened to me. There's some very strange things out there. There's a lot of unexplained phenomena, and that has stuck with me for 36 years, and have never forgotten it. It's as vivid in my memory today as when it happened, and it's still a little bit unsettling because not knowing what it is, I mean, I'm not saying these things do any harm, but just not knowing if it's alien technology, if it's something to do with ghosts or spirits. I mean, it's just really strange. It's just a really strange phenomena, and I'm interested in stuff like that because, you know, I want to understand the world that we live in, and things like that just make you question, you know, what the hell's going on. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed my story. I guarantee you it's all true, and if you've experienced a Min Min light, or if in your part of the world you've experienced something strange like that, mention it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, if you've enjoyed this and want to see some more interesting videos from me, please like and subscribe, and I'll see what I can come up with for you. Got plenty of good stories. Okay, all the best. Take care. See ya.